Hello, welcome to the Sports Philanthropy Podcast. I am your host, Roy Kessel, and today we are very excited to have with us a special guest. We have Justin Prettyman. Justin is the Executive Director of the 49ers Foundation. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Roy. Excited to be here.
We're excited to learn more about all the great work you're doing at the 49ers Foundation. I know there's some incredible programs that we've seen the work that you're doing there and everything that's on your site and some amazing initiatives. But before we dive into all of that work, I want to take you back to when you were young and learn a little bit more about Justin and how you developed your passion for sports.
Sure. I grew up, I think, at the dawn of the internet and AOL and whatnot. So there wasn't as many distractions. So I didn't spend time scrolling through Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whatnot, or playing my friends virtually in games. I was outside playing games with my friends, um, and that's really where the passion started for me for sports. Was that it literally, quite literally, and I think a lot of people around my age and older can agree that like sports really brought together the neighborhood and brought together the community in a sense. So that's really what kind of spurred my passion for sports. Was like that's where I made my friends, that's where I made my connections. The score and the outcome of the game was kind of secondary, I guess, a little bragging rights here and there, but it was really creating those bonds, and even playing for you, like your hometown team and little league and whatnot. There was that sense of pride there. That's really what I remember about playing sports growing up.
It's interesting because when you talk to people about their experience with sports, almost universally, I come back and focus on the word play. And there's been a lot of research on how play is being taken out of sports and how the competitive elements that the youth sports industry is focused on, a lot of parents want to focus on, is not necessarily what makes the kids enjoy the sport the most.
Yeah, the crazy thing is, like, we are over a year into this pandemic, right? And there are a ton of negatives. Over 500,000 people tragically lost their lives to coronavirus. There are a few silver linings in all of this, and I think silver lining, one of the silver linings is that it did force us to recalibrate sports a little bit. My kids just started playing sports again a couple weeks ago after a long hiatus. And I hope that recalibration of sport will also lend itself to just getting out and playing. Like, forget the score, forget like me versus you, and like, practice in the morning, practice in the afternoon, and practice at lunch, and just get back to that four-letter word play. And hopefully, I know that's for me and my family and a lot of our programs here, primarily our 49ers prep, which is our youth football initiative, and we can talk more about that. It is all about playing, it is all about being active, and that's why I love a bunch of the professional sports, whether it be baseball with their Play Ball initiative or football with Play 60. To your point, exactly, we are using that four-letter word to emphasize that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. It's a game at the end of the day, and it should not be taken more seriously than that.
You think back to when you were younger, when I was younger, I started playing soccer at U8, which was young, in my days. I'm 56, that was young for soccer. Now my son started playing at 4, right? And he wasn't playing travel by 10. And so he was way behind because the kids that were playing travel from 8, right, obviously were getting drilled multiple times a week. I remember growing up, we played soccer. We had some quote unquote formal practices, but most days after school, it's like you went home, you dropped your books at home and had a snack, and then everybody would just come and congregate at the field until it got dark, and mom started yelling out the door like dinner time, and the whole neighborhood would go scurrying home.
Yeah, it was play till the street lights came on in my neighborhood. Like you can be outside until the street lights came on, and yeah, I those are the most fond memories for me. I grew up on the East Coast, and my family and I actually relocated to the West Coast for this position. So because of Mother Nature alone, and on the East Coast, many families they're forced to play, seasonal sports. You can't do baseball year round, or else you're going to be out in the frozen tundra out there. But out here in various parts of the country, you see it. Just the weather lends itself to being able to play one sport 360. And I think that there's been plenty of conversations and plenty of articles written and studies done about the impacts of being so narrowly focused on one sport and drilling it in. Personally, this is Justin, Justin Prettyman, the person, and not Justin Prettyman, the executive director. I think that's a negative thing where you just hone in on one sport that, this kid, whether it be 4 or 5 years old, just eat, breathes, and sleeps one sport, because you develop and you become a better athlete from that diversity and being able to see your body move in different ways and interact with different coaches and learn in a different environment. So I think that there's so many more positives to differentiating your palette for sport than just having that one specialty.
Yeah, I think you hit on a really key point there, which, as you said, that the data is clear. Um, Specializing in a sport early is bad for a whole variety of reasons. You get the overuse injuries, you get burnout on a particular sport. You're starting to see a lot of discussion on the mental health issues where somebody's entire identity is defined by a sport that they picked at 8 years old. And Justin's favorite sport at 8 years old may not be his favorite sport at 10, 12, 14, or 16. And then if you go and you're playing three sports, you can switch. You can put more emphasis on one sport as you get into high school and as you really determine what makes sense. But when your whole identity is wrapped up in, say, football versus basketball versus baseball, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. And if your body doesn't grow and your skills don't develop at the rate that matches the rest of your peers, in a sense, a lot of kids are walking away feeling like a failure when, in a true sense, they should have been playing three sports. Now they've got an opportunity to see where their passion lies.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we need to train ourselves to kind of look 50,000 foot view. Some of our like favorite athletes, and just regular athletes on it could be the 10th man on the roster, whatever. They grew up playing multiple sports. Look at, Russell Wilson, baseball player, football player. Look at Michael Jordan, baseball player, best basketball player arguably in the world. LeBron James grew up playing football and basketball. So you see all these mega superstars who grew up as dual sport athletes. So like the proof is in the pudding. And I think like we get so fixated on having this dream for our children, myself too, that you want them to be the best on the field, and you kind of lose sight of why they're on the field and why they're out there, and that is really to just have fun and enjoy the sport and enjoy play. I'm going to keep coming back to that. I love that, Roy, the emphasis on play, because I truly feel like it's lost, and I truly feel that we need to kind of focus our priorities and emphasize play, and then we'll see kids fall back in love with playing sports and fall out of love with playing video games and being in front of a screen all day.
Yeah, and I think it's, as you said, it's all about balance, and having those different sports balances out the development of your muscles, your physical balance and skill set develop differently. So when you were growing up, what were the sports that you played that you had a passion for?
So when I was growing up, mine were similar to you. Soccer. I loved soccer. That was probably my first love. And back in the day, there were weight restrictions around youth football, and I think they've since done away with those in some areas. But I couldn't play football. I was always the biggest kid. But I love football. So basketball, I played a lot, and then when I was old enough to play in high school football, I played high school football. And the funny thing is, I grew up in a real big baseball town. I grew up in a little town in Rhode Island called Portsmouth, Rhode Island. Um, and baseball was the big sport there, baseball and football, but baseball was really the big sport. So um, uh, I played a little bit. I was never any good at all. You can fact check that for sure. Um, but I ended up going on to the majors in a different capacity and getting a career in baseball. So it's funny how these things work out. And I think that so many people focus on, wanting to become a professional athlete that they lose sight of all the careers that you can have and all the things that you can do, like yourself, Roy, working in sports, but never being on the game field or on the court or anything like that. I think developing that love of sport at an early age can lead you down several different paths to stay involved in sports throughout your career and out throughout your life.
There's no doubt. I talk to students frequently, and they're looking for career paths and asking me what they should do. And I tell them, I can't tell you what career interests you. You need to find where your passion and skills are, but you can apply it in a sports context. Any career you can think of in today's sports business world, you can take virtually any career, right? Medicine, law, finance, accounting, marketing, anything you want to do, you can go and apply in a sports setting. And so you've got to figure out what those skills are and concentrate on school and education, because that forms the basis for what you're going to be able to do in a professional capacity if you don't have the physical gifts to be an elite athlete or a professional athlete. So as you were going through school, take us through school in terms of what you did for college and to prepare for your professional career.
Yeah, sure. So, and I speak to a lot of students too. So, and it sounds like we say similar things, that there is no defined path. And again, showing my age and some of the gray hairs on my head and on my chin here. When I was growing up and going in, graduating high school and going into college, sports management wasn't a popular track. It
Didn't
just
exist, yeah.
didn't exist. There might have been like a handful of colleges and universities in the country who had it, and now it's on almost every resume that I see. And that's not a good or a bad thing. But so what I did, like many students, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was coming out of high school. I wasn't really 100% sure what I wanted to get into. I went to Penn State for my first year or so, and then my mom actually got sick. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, and being a mama's boy, I kind of just decided to transfer and not tell my parents, which they were really thrilled about. And I transferred to a city school in Boston called Suffolk University. Suffolk University that has rolling admissions, so meaning you can apply at any time, and it's not a particular window. And I went from Penn State, this huge, well-known, like really college experience, that traditional college experience campus, to an urban environment where the city was your campus, and had to figure my own way. And when I was there, a couple of cool things about Suffolk University at the time, I actually don't know if it's still like this, but the Suffolk University gym for their basketball team was where all the away teams would practice when they came to play the Celtics. So, I would see all these NBA players coming in and out, and just be in awe. But what I really caught my eye was all the people who were around them, the non-basketball players, the non-coaches, the PR staff that were there, the camera people that were there, um, some of the logistics people that travel with the team, and just wondering, well, I know it's too late for me to make the NBA, but I can still get a career in sports. So that really piqued my interest. And then one of the courses that I took while I was at Suffolk was called Sports Crisis Management. And my teacher, the professor of that class, was a guy by the name of Wayne Levy. He was the head of the Shamrock Foundation, was the Celtics charitable arm at the time. And when I sat in his class day one, and he kind of gave us a little background on his career, that's when the light bulb went off, because it was the first time I had ever heard in my life somebody say that they worked for a professional sports team, but on the charitable side. And it was like, wait, I didn't even know that was a thing, that you could do that. And I had grown up, my parents were really diligent about making me give back and working, giving away presents every birthday. I would pick a present to donate, and always work, every holiday we would volunteer at food shelters. So that was always something that was very important to my family. So it was this passion of mine for contributing to the community, and then a love of sports that I grew up with. And I saw those two worlds collide and come together in this professor, and it opened my eyes. And then I got online and did a little research, and I was like, wow, this is a profession and something I could pursue. So that's really where it all came together. So um, I studied when I was in school. I had a dual major in public relations and political science. And again, that's another thing, another lesson I tell kids, and I'm sure you do too, Roy, is that just because you have a degree in X doesn't mean that necessarily needs to be your career path. You can study what you're passionate about. I love politics, and I love public relations and being able to talk and facilitate communication. Uh, but I never wanted to get into politics. So you need to go to school, learn a track, but ultimately you need to follow your path.
Well, I think that's an important message because it applies equally to the nonprofit space for the work in the community. There's so many different areas to be able to make an impact. And as you go through that, so give us a little bit of background. Then you started with after school. Talk about some of the jobs you had prior to the 49ers Foundation, and what led you that direction.
Yeah, so it's actually a pretty interesting story. I'll try to be concise, but so when I was working, or when I was in school in Boston, um, because it was an urban environment and whatnot, they only had a limited number of dorms, so I lived off campus. And right down the street from where I lived was a live music venue in Boston that's still around today, called the Paradise Rock Club. And so I got a job there, bar backing and working security at the time. And my one of my first events that they held there was Theo Epstein, who was the then general manager of the Boston Red Sox, held his foundation's fundraising event, and it was called Hot Stove Cool Music. It was bringing in musicians and professional athletes for a fundraiser, and that was another eye-opening experience, because it was my first time going to a real fundraising event and seeing like all the celebrities and all the sports figures and all the entertainers in one place in one time, and they raised a ton of money that night. So I worked the event the first year. The following year, I went to our general manager and I said, hey Jeff, could you put me in contact with the people who ran this event last year? I would love to volunteer for it. So the next year, that when the event came around, I volunteered and I worked with the Theo's Foundation, which is called the Foundation to Be Named Later, which is a play on a player to be named later in a trade, and some sports terminology there. And the foundation to be named later worked very closely with the Red Sox team charity, the Red Sox Foundation. So I was put in contact with the two heads of those two organizations, and it was just right place at right time. Really, it couldn't have worked out better for me because I had worked at this venue for now over a year. I knew all the ins and outs. I knew who to talk to get things done on the inside. So they thought like I was some miracle worker who was able to get them, lights here and get them ice there and get them signage here and there. And it was really just I knew the inner workings of the venue. Fast forward, the event was a great success. And then the Red Sox Foundation asked me, hey, if you want to come back and volunteer a little bit more, come back and volunteer. So I did. And that slowly started to build and build. And one thing led to another. And I started, they offered me an entry level position with the Red Sox Foundation. And again, right place at the right time. This was right around the off season of 2006 that I started actually working for the team. And then, going into the 2007 World Series, they ended up winning the World Series. It was my first full season with the team. So, I mean, talk about timing. So I got to experience a World Series victory, my first year with the team. And while I was there, we won another one in 2013. So that was really cool. And that was the same year as the Boston Marathon bombing. So there was a lot there, but on the community side, it was just, a really cool time to be a part of a professional sports team and really get the community to rally around sports and the return to sports. And, Boston Strong was the message throughout that season. And it was a magical time. I was also there in 2012, which was one of the worst seasons as far as on-field performance. So it was definitely some highs and lows on the field, but one thing that was consistent was our work in the community, and that was from the top down, and it is here as well.
Well, it's an amazing journey as you describe it in terms of the opportunities and how those doors open up. And just quickly before we jump ahead to the 49ers now, uh, I frequently discuss the fact with people, it's put yourself in the right place because you don't know when that opportunity is going to come up. While you're in school, you have the capability to go and volunteer at the athletic department, to go and volunteer for special types of events and be part of those things. And you don't know when you're going to find that right connection or right opportunity. And uh, there is a certain element of luck, but part of it is if you're sitting on your couch, you're not going to be meeting people. If you're out volunteering, I've had the opportunity to do for lots of different events. It's fun. You meet people, you learn everywhere you go. And so, what prompted the move from Boston to San Francisco then? Was that just a job opportunity or was there something else that attracted you to the West Coast?
It was really the opportunity. I was in love with my job with the Red Sox. Loved everybody there. I had been there for almost 12, 13 years at the time. And really, I had a really good friend who was a former colleague of mine at the Red Sox, who is now here at the 49ers. And I saw the opportunity popped up, pinged her about it, and she was like, yeah, you should 100% go for it. We kind of communicated a little bit, and I tossed my name into the hat. And to your earlier point, it's you never know until you try, until you get off your couch, or until you send that email. So it wasn't really anything other than like, hey, let's see, this is an amazing opportunity. These, one thing that people know and you will learn working in sports is that opportunities like this, there's a whole industry, as we know, and the sports management track in college is churning out degrees for a finite amount of positions working for professional sports clubs. So
Right.
these opportunities are few and far between. So I tossed my name into the hat and was so lucky that one thing led to another, and I was able to join the 49ers Foundation. And a really cool story that I shared with my board of directors. This is the 30th anniversary of the 49ers Foundation. And so at our last board meeting, we kicked off the meeting and asked the board to go around and share, a fond memory over the past 30 years. And I started with my memory, and my memory was coming back from my last interview. There was a series of interviews, and I came back a couple of times. I flew out here to meet folks for the job, and my last interview, I flew back to Boston, and I was working kind of late night in the office at Fenway Park, and our offices at the time were in the bowels of the park and underneath. So it was dark and dingy and whatnot, and I had the TV on ESPN, and I'm working away, and I see on the TV, or I hear on the TV, a familiar voice come up, and I pop my head up to see, I recognize the voice, and it was Dr. York, who is the co-chair and owner of the 49ers, who I just met with the day before here in Santa Clara. And he was on stage at the ESPYs accepting the 2017 ESPN Sports Humanitarian Team of the Year award. And at that point, I was just like, okay, this has got to be a sign. This has got to be a sign that I am sitting here randomly watching TV in the background, and this job that I just applied for and this man that I just met is now accepting the biggest award in our industry, in sports philanthropy. I got a call a couple of weeks later to let me know that pack your bags and come out west, and it's been a great experience ever since.
Well, the 49ers have a great track record as an organization in terms of supporting the community. Probably one of the best teams in the NFL at dedicating resources to doing that, and um, not just having it be window dressing in terms of player appearances or autographs or things like that, but really enmeshing themselves in the community. I know you've got a backdrop behind you that kind of outlines some of the things there. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so this backdrop is educate and empower Bay Area youth. So that's our mission statement, and that's what the team has been doing for 30 years. Over $50 million invested back into the community, which is just astronomical when you think of it, because this really didn't become, sports philanthropy really didn't become a thing until, recently. It's gained a lot of steam, especially over the past couple of years, but for 30 years and $50 million, that is just huge, huge. And they put their money where their mouth is. They built this stadium in 2014. In our stadium, we have 4 classrooms. Okay, so for those people in sports, they know when you're building a stadium, these are billion-dollar projects. And what you're thinking about doing is, how can I turn, some revenue and get fans in there and buying t-shirts and hats and whatnot? It takes a different type of ownership and a different type of mentality to say, hey, I want to put some classrooms in here, and I want to welcome in about 60,000 students and teachers each year to learn in our stadium and use our stadium as a dual resource center. And so that's just one sign of the commitment. We also, the Empower here speaks to our youth football program. So we call it 49ers Prep. And I get a lot of questions. What is prep? Why prep? Well, prep is short for preparatory, and like preparing you for that next level. And that next level could be, going from the Mighty Mites to, Pop Warner or whatnot. But it's really preparing you mentally. Our mission statement and our overview for 49ers Prep does not even mention the word football, and that's done intentionally because we want our program to go beyond football. Of course, we want to encourage kids to get out and play football and have fun in doing so, but we really put the emphasis on empowering you and like the intangibles that sports teaches you off the field. So our 2 primary focuses are education through our 49ers EDU program, which is presented by Chevron, and then our 49ers prep program, which is presented by US Bank. And those programs, like I said, EDU is doing about pre-pandemic was doing about 60,000 students coming into the stadium each year, going through our 4 classrooms. On the other hand, 49ers Prep is boots on the ground in the community, hitting on about 40,000 students, going to schools and through flag football league. So all in total, we're impacting about 100,000 Bay Area youth a year. That all changed, of course, with the pandemic. We were able to get super creative and churn out some great virtual content. Our virtual content has gone to over 90 school districts. Over 120,000 students have adopted it. I couldn't be, I could ramble on and on and on and on. I'm clearly very excited and love the work that our team is doing.
Well, you've covered a lot of ground there, and I think the important element goes back to exactly what you have behind you, the educate and empower Bay Area youth. You talk about the fact that it's really about building better people through sports, not necessarily about churning out the elite athletes. There's enough organizations that kind of focus on that specialized area, but most kids aren't ever going to be a professional athlete, and it's important to make sure that they have that education and can still maintain that connection, right? From your perspective, for the 49ers brand and for the work that you're doing in the community. Um, so when you started, you talked about the sponsorship with Chevron for the EDU and with US Bank for the 49ers prep. Talk a little bit about that, because so many organizations and foundations struggle to get funding. Obviously, you have the benefit of a professional sports franchise behind you and a brand and dollars that many organizations don't. But I think conceptually, it's still the right model to look at finding a sponsor, not for your 1 day golf tournament where the sponsorship is a hit and run, like it goes away, but really adopting it in the concept of how do you brand a program that's ongoing.
Yeah, so it's a great point, and I appreciate you bringing it up. I th- from my time with the Red Sox to my time now with the 49ers, the words before foundation can cut like a double-edged sword. They can either open doors for you or close doors for you. And that's not because people don't like the 49ers or the Red Sox, but people look at, oh, the 49ers, you guys are flush with cash, or the Red Sox, you guys are flush with cash, and they don't look past those opening couple of words to the word foundation. And we are a 501c3 foundation, so we need partnership. And we really do a great job of not only going out and finding our own partners and whatnot. So Chevron is the perfect example. Chevron has been a partner of the 49ers Foundation before I came on board, and I've been able to continue that relationship and maintain it. But they also are not a team partner. They're not the official gas provider of the San Francisco 49ers. They are a partner of the 49ers Foundation. Whereas on the flip side, US Bank is a team partner. They are the official bank of the 49ers. So it's having a little bit of both and really finding companies that are sponsoring, your team, and helping them tell a more holistic story about their partnership. I talked to our owner and co-chair John York about this all the time. When he started the 49ers, or when he was a part of the start of the 49ers Foundation 30 years ago, he talks about how all sponsors really cared about was seeing their name on in a program or on lights or on the scoreboard or whatnot, and how that has changed so much, where partners really want to get the most bang for their investment, right? So if they're going to sponsor you on the field and have those on the field assets, how can they tell a more holistic story and find ways to connect on that community level too? And we're so fortunate to have US Bank with 49ers Prep. And then for our education program, Chevron is in our backyard. They're based right here in the East Bay here in California, in San Ramon, and they are a STEM company. So that's our big emphasis is STEM technology. So it made sense to partner there. And it's finding those companies that you align with your corporate ethos. You have similar principles as far as your work in the community. Chevron's, very focused on education as we are. And then US Bank, like they are wanting to revitalize communities and give back to youth. And what better way to do that than encouraging youth sports? So we're really fortunate that we have a really savvy group, both on my staff, who goes out and looks for partners, but also on the team side who brings partnerships to us. It's a really great relationship.
Yeah, I think you really hit on the key point that is critical to the whole relationship, which is finding somebody, as you said, that has that ethos, so that that matches what you're trying to do as a foundation. And I think too often we see organizations run out and they look just at the biggest company in the area, right? And so here in Chicago, we get almost every group that we talk to says McDonald's or Wilson Sporting Goods should be sponsoring us, or United Airlines, and they don't develop a connection to the cause and to what they're doing and find a way to really connect that value to the organization. Sometimes it's aligned with the brand and a brand mission, but often it's really stating your case for why what you're doing is important, helping them understand what your work is really going to do. And I think you guys have done a great job. You talk about the COVID impact and how many schools are using some of that curriculum now. Why don't you walk us through some of the items that are in that digital program?
Yeah. So one of the things that we did, like I said, when the pandemic hit, we had to get creative. So we were really great boots on the ground. 100,000 Bay Area youth served each year. But pandemic hits, we can't have that same interaction, but the need is still there. And what we really wanted to do was tackle the digital demand. So there was a digital divide where there was a need for technology and hardware and like resources, but there also a need for content. And that's where our expertise was, because we were hearing teachers and coaches coming to us and saying like, I don't know what to do. Like we don't have the ability and we don't have the resources to keep students engaged. I mean, my kids are sitting at home for hours on end in front of a Zoom trying to learn, and the teachers are
I
doing
can't even imagine.
doing so. I can't imagine going from a classroom setting and a classroom teacher to saying tomorrow you're teaching digitally and that's a total different environment. So where we come in is we come up with digital lessons, digital workouts, and digital resources that we provide to schools free of charge. And we're even taking it one step further with our EDU program, and we are starting to help teach classes. So we have a team of educators. We are, to my knowledge, I think we are the only team in professional sports who has full-time educators on staff who are going to schools and partnering with districts to teach. So they're seeing Professor Kessel come on screen every day, and then they see a 49ers educator come in, and then they automatically perk up, and like it's a whole new way of learning. So we've been really uh, the feedback has been great for about that program. It's called the Digital Huddle. So that's our hub for all the digital resources. Again, another sign of partnership. We have Cisco, Dignity Health, and SAP all came together and said, we want to invest in these digital resources that you can provide back to the community. So it is to kind of tell the story that you were telling before. It is that ultimate tale of partners and finding the right partners with, we have technology brand in Cisco and SAP, and also a health and wellness company with Dignity Health stepping up and providing resources to help us deliver content to students. In addition to that, both of our programs also rolled out Spanish language content. uh, to help our Spanish speaking communities learn and stay active and stay involved as well. So I'm really, really proud of everything that we've accomplished and the resources that we've made available. And we've really been going outward to deliver them, not just posting them on our website, but we're really going to teachers and coaches and the districts and the communities and saying, hey, these resources are available to you. One other thing that we did, I want to make sure I mention this, is we have in our classrooms, we use a textbook, a playbook, we call it. We have distributed over 10,000 physical playbooks to Bay Area students um, to use because, like my kids, they can go to school and they can pick up resources to bring home and learn. Well, we've distributed 10,000 of these pamphlets and these playbooks to students, so they have actual physical resources in addition to what they're getting from their schools.
Well, it's an amazing amount of information that's there, and the ability to pivot with everything that happened in COVID in the last year. Uh, there was no playbook for how to deal with COVID. And it's something that so many groups have struggled with. I can't imagine. I think about myself being in school, right? Elementary school, middle, high school, any of them, and having to sit on Zoom all day instead of interacting with people and watching that. And then my recreation, when I get out of school and I want to go to practice for soccer or tennis or intramurals or anything I'm doing, right now my athletic involvement is sitting in your own house on Zoom doing something else. And obviously, there's been some really creative and innovative ways to engage kids through Zoom. But uh, just the thought of being locked inside and not being able to move around the way that you're used to doing and connecting with people, I can't even imagine how hard that's been. I know it's been hard for me, but it would have been a lot harder 40 years ago when I was a teenager.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the so those playbooks that we distributed, that's another partner who came on board, and that one is very interesting because it speaks to exactly what you're saying is the mental health side of it. The state's mental health agency, Cal Hope, is the presenting sponsor of our Playbook Patrol, and that's when we go to schools and deliver these playbooks, and that's because they recognize the toll that it's taking on students to be so disconnected from their communities and their school communities and what has become the norm for us. So I completely agree. It's funny that for us up until recently, a break for my kids was saying, hey, you can go from this Zoom class to playing video games with your friends because that's really the only. So let's go from this one screen over here to this screen over here. But it was a concession that we made because it was a way to get them to interact with their friends and have some downtime. But luckily, sports are back and my kids are. I'm back to being a taxi driver and sending them to practices and games.
That's a good problem to have. So it's nice to see sports starting to come back around the country in different capacities, depending on the state and the weather and things like that. But I know you guys have your 30th anniversary coming up. Tell us about what plans you have and how you're planning to celebrate.
Yeah, so I mean, again, timing is timing is everything. I feel so fortunate that I've been at the right place at the right time a couple times throughout my life, and this is one of them. This is not only is it the Foundation's 30th anniversary, but it's also the 75th anniversary of the San Francisco 49ers. So throughout the season, we're going to be celebrating a lot of different milestones. And for us, we will kick off our celebration on Tuesday, uh, uh, May 11th, and we have a lot of secrets in store with some new events. And one thing that's been important to me since day one has been making our foundation accessible to all fans. So yes, we love the big ticket donors and the folks who are gonna there to be able to make those major gifts and major donations. But we don't want there to be any barrier to entry. So there's going to be a lot of different events taking place throughout the upcoming season. Most importantly, they're going to be events and opportunities where all fans can get involved and contribute, because like that is really what it's all about, and especially what our foundation is all about. It's all the faithful, anybody who wears that 49ers oval and has that pride of this team. We want them to have that same pride for the work that we're doing in the community and feel a part of it as well.
So if people want to learn more about the work that the 49ers Foundation is doing in your upcoming events, let everybody know the best place to get that information.
The best place to get the information, I'll give you two resources. One, 49ers.com/foundation. And then the second is on our social media. You can go to our Twitter page. It is at 49ers community. And that's, you'll be seeing some really cool announcements coming from us. Our honorary chairman is none other than the Hall of Famer himself, the GOAT, Jerry Rice. And Jerry Rice is a huge supporter. He's a champion on the field and a champion in the community for us. So he's going to be making some pretty cool announcements in the coming weeks as well.
Well, that's exciting. Justin, I want to congratulate you for the outstanding work that you're doing with the 49ers Foundation. I know you've got a lot of programs, a lot of moving parts, and it's a testament, as you said, to the ownership of the team and the leadership from above in terms of seeing that vision and putting that plan in place and giving you the resources and the staff to be able to execute the breadth of programming that you're doing. So congratulations.
Well, thanks so much, Roy. And honestly, thank you for this platform. Again, it is there is a whole industry around sports and philanthropy, and I truly appreciate you for creating a platform for us to deliver this message and talk about this work and learn from each other.
Well, we appreciate you joining us here and sharing your insight. What I want to do before we let you go is have a little bit of fun and put you on the spot here. We're going to wave our sports philanthropy magic wand and use our superpowers. All right, and now you get the chance to be appointed as commissioner of a sport. So tell us what sport you would choose.
Wow. I think I'll choose the sport I'm in, and I'll choose football. So I'll take the commissioner of football.
Okay, so you've moved Roger out of Park Avenue and sent him into retirement, and now you're in charge. What's your first course of action? Are you rule change on the field or some kind of policy? What would you change?
Yeah, I think I would. The one thing that I would do is make a commitment to community. Surprise, right? The head of the foundation is going to make a community initiative, but the NFL does a phenomenal job already. The NFL Foundation is just incredibly generous and incredibly progressive with their programming. But I would also try to mandate a certain level of requirements. Right now, I'm incredibly grateful that the team I work for has had, at least since I've gotten here, and I think even before, 100% player participation in community activities. I would like to see that across the league, and I think that these teams, these 32 clubs, represent so much more. They go way beyond just the game for people. It's really a source of pride for regions that I feel like there should be some emphasis from the league that all players should have at least one day of service mandated by the league to give back to the community, however they best see fit, and whatever their passion is. I think would be great.
That would be a great goal, and I know we had Troy Vincent at Sports Philanthropy World last year. I'm sure he would share your vision from a league perspective in terms of getting that commitment. But I know that they've invested a lot and really increased the profile of the work that athletes are doing and helping amplify the voice for the work that individual athletes are doing. So I think the league is taking that step. But I'm sure, Justin, with your leadership, with the NFL would take it to another level. So again, thank you for coming on with us today. We appreciate your time.
Well, thanks again, Roy. And I appreciate the platform and the ability to share some of the work that we're doing. And I hope that the listeners and viewers will follow us throughout this upcoming season. It's going to be an exciting one.
Well, and for all our viewers and listeners, we really appreciate the fact that you took the time to join us here today. You're an important part of our community. We hope you join us for the next episode of the Sports Philanthropy Podcast. This is your host, Roy Kessel, signing off. Please remember to live generously. Thank you.